And I'll do an official welcome. So again, thanks everybody for joining today. So our IT Service Management EDUCAUSE community group had an attempt this year at picking a practice in the general service management space. And our intention was every month or two to have like a focus on that practice. Well, that turned into 6 months. I was overly ambitious about how much we could accomplish just with timing of everything. So the first one we picked was service desk, just because there's always so much interest in that. And every time we tried to talk about metrics in the last couple of years, everybody really wanted to dig into the service desk stuff. So we decided to cap that kind of whole series of events off with some presentations here today from Cornell and from Miami University about service desk metrics. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time up front. I'm going to turn it over to our panelists from Cornell, have them introduce themselves, and they'll kind of walk you through what they do, and then I'll walk you through some Miami stuff, and then we'll leave time and questions at the end. I think anybody should feel free if you have a dying question or something that you really want to squeeze in. You can unmute, you can ask, you can put it in chat. We'll try to monitor all the things. So welcome and go ahead and take it away.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Alicia Hilliard for the central IT organization. I focused on service management, and I'll mostly be sharing for Kian today, who's star of the show. If you want to introduce yourself, Kian, and your
Sure.
role at the service desk.
Sure. I'm Keon Williams. I'm the assistant director. I'm over level 1, level 2 help desk and provisioning. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's always fun with screen share and Zoom because the Zoom covers up my hit the show slideshow. So give me a minute as I move stuff around. Slideshow, start from, and then it switches which screen. Shoot.
Up top, I think back in the share, you can say swap screens.
Swap displays.
There
Okay,
you
here we go.
Yeah, that looks good.
Thank you. Yeah, so Keon, you have 3 different teams
Yes.
underneath you. And we just wanted to make a note that some of the dashboards we're going to share have individuals on the slides. We don't want to put them on blast, so we've sort of obscured their individual names, but in general, I think you'll still get the value out of what they do for measuring individual performance towards the overall service desk goals. Just a quick overview of how we approach measurement and reporting. We have a data repository that pulls in from multiple sources. The key source for Keon's data and metrics are really coming from our service management suite out of Team Dynamics. It also pulls in things from Ring Central for call data. And then we work to roll out dashboards at each level of the organization. So senior leadership, service, delivery managers, and then Kian has specific dashboards for service desk managers and the teams. And that's really, it's been a journey for us since 2020 when we switched over to the new ticketing system to really go from just having data largely, which was volume and tickets and survey results, and then really figuring out how to boil that down into KPIs to get what we have on the dashboards today. A lot of work to get where we are. This is a view of our CAT All dashboard, which are our main 4 KPIs that we track for not just Kian and the service desk, but for all the teams that provide service and support. And these will be provided after, if you're curious as to how we do those calculations, we've put those at the bottom. But in general, we'll have our SLA, which is pretty industry standard metric. And then the backlog growth rate is looking at the tickets that come in and the tickets that we've closed and looking at, are we keeping up with that every month or are we accruing a backlog over time? And then the feedback survey is looking at the surveys that get sent out after tickets get resolved, where we're asking our customers how we're doing. And we're actually at about a 97% feedback survey rating, but the dip here is actually related to needing to remove storage from Google from alumni. And so unfortunately, we've been getting some complaints of as we have to remove some of that storage because we are not paying for it. And Kian, if you want to give us a overview of the ITSD metrics.
Sure, sure. Well, we have quite a few here. The feedback survey, as Alicia said, is after we resolve a ticket, we send out a survey and people give us feedback. And we reply to those feedbacks. If it's good feedback, we love it. If it's bad feedback, we want to find out why. Sometimes it's related to the service desk, sometimes it's related to the service that the service desk is supporting. So we also do ticket volume. So this is overall tickets that we get, that we receive, and we also break those down to how many we resolve along with how many are sent out. SLA response, SLA resolution, and average speed to answer, which is getting a little bit higher. We usually try to keep it around 4 to 5 seconds, but as Alicia said, we have some new things happening here that is causing people to contact us a little bit more. We also break down our ticket volume to the services that we are covering for. This helps us to maybe waterfall some of these questions down, so we're always looking for more efficient ways of servicing the service that we cover for.
Thanks, Kian. Yeah, and if we have time, I'll go out to the live dashboard to show what Kian's mentioning, because for all of these 4 main KPIs that were on this slide here, we can slice them down to drill down by support group as well as what service or service offering, and see these 4 KPIs by either group or by service.
There's a question from Nick about how you guys calculate first call resolution.
Oh, that's a good one. Basically, the way we calculate it is if it comes in and we resolve it, it doesn't move out of our team. So I know people have different ways of calculating this. Some people is like, while I have them on the phone. The way we do it is as long as it doesn't go out to another team. Sometimes it'll take a little bit more troubleshooting. People are busy. We'll do that. We'll, and then call them back with an answer and resolve it for them.
Yeah, and we do have out on the EDUCAUSE website stats for how we calculate all of these. So I will pop the link in the chat for
Awesome.
those who want to see how we're calculating FCR. We don't have the ability in our ticketing system to really calculate that, if it's really the first call resolution. We do more first contact resolution with the service desk rather than first call resolution. And that's somewhat just a restriction of the tools we have for measurement.
CSAT score, as Alicia's said, we have pretty good CSATs. We always look to get better, and we do a lot of follow-ups to make sure that we understand when people are not happy, because that's important. So. Ticket volume and resolution, this is a good one. We always measure how many tickets come in, but it's important to us how many that we resolve and how many are getting resolved. So the interesting thing is the way it's set up at Cornell is some schools will use us to take the information, troubleshoot it, and send it on its way so that their team can resolve those tickets. So it's not always the best way. I would love to be able to resolve it, but those are some service desks just rather work on their customer tickets. But for the ones that are CIT services, they all come into us and we resolve those tickets as much as we can. And then we also measure by individuals and also by schools and also by service, which one we could not resolve. And we always look for opportunities to waterfall those things down to us and to train our individuals to be able to do more so that it doesn't go up to what we call level 3 support. Again, with the resolution and response time, we measure these and we look at level 1 and level 2 and how they're doing with resolving and also responding to these tickets to make sure that we are falling within the SLAs of which has been set up for us. So we want to make sure that we are keeping to those SLAs.
And an important point to note is we measure SLA really by, say, it's a request for access that would typically be a 2-day response, 5-day turnaround. It might be a request for AV in-room classroom support, and that might have a 2-day, 10-day turnaround. So there isn't one SLA that's by service desk. Rather, as we define all of our services and offerings for routine service request activities for those services, they each get targets that are lined up with what we've agreed to provide around timing frequency. So really getting those service level targets figured out with all the service delivery managers is needed for Kiana and the services to know how soon do they really need to turn around certain types of requests.
And I think that may answer the question that was in the queue in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. So there was a question of how much input do you have in defining SLAs? So each service and the offerings, when we onboard those with service management, with the service delivery manager and the service owner, they write what's called a service level expectations doc. So like SLA in the context of contract writing is an actual agreement for turnaround times, not the SLA field in your ticketing system. So in order to populate your ticketing system with the SLA targets, you really need that agreement contract that's defining what are the turnaround times for the service in order to populate that into the ticketing system. Service management, my team, when we onboard or offboard services, handle that discussion with the service delivery team to define the targets so that we can set those up, and then Kian and team can measure their turnaround times against those targets.
Okay, I'll keep it moving. I'll call stats, basically total calls within Ring Central, average speed to answer, and we measure this individually and also weekly and monthly to come up with a number. And like I said, we have a level 1 and level 2. So sometimes what we see happen if level 1 is really getting hammered, we would level 2, those calls will roll over to level 2. So this is 2 things this does. It keeps the queue moving, and it also allows for the level 2 people to help out when level 1 needs it. So this it works great for us, especially most universities are being asked to do more with less. So this is how we keep that queue freed up as much as possible.
Excellent. And I see another question in the chat around,
SLAs?
yeah, and I can definitely share that template. I don't think that's posted on the EDUCAUSE website, so I will contact Mitch to get that out there and then can share that with you all or meet you in the community forum, and then I will maybe attach it after this.
And
And
again, like we said, we had individual analysts and we see how much time they spend. We also noticed that tickets tend to, calls lessen when we put automation in play. So when we put a new form out there for certain things, we'll get less calls. If we have an outage, of course, calls will spike, but we'll put a recording out there, let them know where to look for this information to keep the call volumes down. But we also look at individuals because we have a lot of ways for customers to get in touch with us. So it's email, it's a chat bot, it's calls. So we want to make sure that we have a balanced team across the board. And these individual Ring Central stats help us to know who's spending time where.
you're doing great, Kian.
Okay, good. Thank you. It's not my forte. So, calls and tickets, we want to make sure that we are not missing tickets, and we want to make sure that, because we know it's never going to be a one-to-one, right? You're always going to have more calls than tickets because people will put in a ticket and they'll call 5 minutes later, what's going on with my ticket, right? So we know it's not a one-to-one, but when you see the numbers that are way off, you have to say, well, or how many agents are just taking calls but not putting in tickets, and we have to review those. So this is how we kind of know where our regular measurements are to make sure that we're, staying where we need to be and making sure that, because agents get busy and they'll rather just resolve the problem and put in the ticket later and forget to put the ticket in. So this is how we try to keep it a one-to-one or close and understand what our numbers are. You want to add anything to that, Alicia?
Just you can kind of get a sense for where the bulk of time goes on the service desk by what services they're supporting. So you could say authorization and authentication are, it's probably consuming almost half of the resource time. So it does give us kind of indications where on the service management side, when we're looking to use automation and workflow or artificial intelligence or any other optimization ways of getting service and support done, we're always kind of looking towards the high volume, heavy hitters around like where we should spend time and effort on improvements to how we deliver service. Not that those of a lower percentage aren't still important, but it's just not as impactful for our time if we're having to make decisions on where it's worth investing improvement opportunity.
Alicia, are these monthly stats? Because there was a question about the duration of these
Yeah, I think
fixes.
the ITSD ones. Um, so that's a good question. We have filters where you can choose the date range that you want to see these for. So not included in the screenshot for the PowerPoint, but once we kick out to the live dashboard for the ones that I can show, you'll see that there's filters where you can choose like the start date or the end date. Some
This
are
one that we're showing now, is
monthly.
that a monthly number? This one that we're showing now.
Calls and tickets.
It looks like it's a monthly number.
Hang on, I'm reconnecting the dashboard so I can look. This is one where you can choose start and end date. I think this one was for a year and a half,
Oh,
was the
okay.
filters that were on the screenshot that was taken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's also a couple questions I'll throw in.
Yeah.
Sally asked, specific to the tech that you use, I think you guys mentioned it's Team Dynamics on the ticket side.
Yeah.
It sounds like
Ring Central. They don't talk to one another, so we have a system that brings that data together. I believe that was the question.
Yep. And then
So
Richard also asked about students. I don't know if you guys use any student employees and if that data is in here.
No, we don't.
sorry, gain some water. So now we'll kick out to the live dashboards for just a few minutes before I hand over to Bob. Looks like I still have maybe like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, we have a
I
couple
think
of
you guys
minutes.
can go like 5 to 10. I think we'll be okay.
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 Yep.
So we'll send these slides out in the community board because we do have some additional information where you can click out and see the calculations for the certain measures and some additional slides on how we handle the metrics and reporting practice, how we validate the data. So how do we know our KPIs are good? We actually run a monthly sample audit so that we can make sure that teams are having good ticketing practices so that we know our reports are accurate. But I'm not going to go into detail around that because we'll send it out after. And I'm going to instead take you out to the live dash. So I'm going to reconnect it here. This is the thing with live demos is you never know how it's going to go, hence the slides. But if it reconnects here, can you see that?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. So this is the main version, but we have different tabs for response SLA and resolution SLA, backlog and volume. So I can filter down and I'll just pick on my own team here because I know service management isn't really an operational team, which means our metrics won't be good, but
Yes, we are using Tableau.
yeah. So you can see for the service oh, this is too bad. I can search for service management program and let's go service management suite for TDX.
Mhm.
And then I can get just for this service, what is the response SLA? And I can do the same thing for resolution. We can also filter by the division in our org chart and down to support group, which I'm not going to pick on any one team, so I'm not going to bother drilling in. But this is helpful for diagnostics where maybe we've got some bad customer feedback or something, and we're trying to drill in where could we improve. Some of the first things I'd look at is, well, is that service and or support group being responsive? Are we resolving things in a quick enough time? You know, is the team maybe understaffed where they can't keep up with the backlog? And then, yeah, I'll click on the backlog one. This gives me a sense of if I drill in by team or by a particular service, helps me identify areas of understaffing where there's no way for them to keep up. They've got more coming in than they can close, and they might be accruing a backlog over time. So that can be a health indicator for both the team and for how we get service done. And then volume by fiscal year gives us some picture of, you know, if we're following the academic calendar, like do we have a uptake at certain times of the year? Like you'll see in December, that's where we usually get a little bit of a break. We have fewer tickets. But then, you know, it's pretty high in
January, when
January.
everybody comes back.
Yeah. And also looking at this, I can see from year to year, oh wow, like our tickets are only increasing and IT services are only going up. There's more that we need to do every year, it seems. Where in the past, I can look back and go, oh, we had some years where it was pretty consistent with the years before. It seems like the need for IT support and service is going up for the university, not down. And I can look at for feedback surveys as well. And again, these are not necessarily specific to the service desk, but any support group can go out here or service delivery manager can check again by the service and also if they want to by a particular group to see what the feedback surveys, which all in all, we're doing very well. But if I drill in, I can find areas where, you know, there's more improvement needed. And then the ITSD dashboard, which we already showed, but I'll just give it a go here. Don't know what those weird things are there, but this gives us a pretty good comprehensive overview of what is getting resolved at the service desk versus what are we having to transfer outside of the service desk to another unit IT group or to another team within our central IT organization. And then we have some service costing tabs, which there's money stuff on those, so I'm not going to click on them. But that's actually where we get a sense of what each service costs us, both from actual vendor costs and hard dollar costs, but also support costs. So I can see how much of, say, the service desk time is this particular service consuming in volume of support, because that's sort of meaning it's a more expensive service if they take more support hours from our resources and FTE.
A
And
question
I'll
in the chat back on the feedback survey, asking about what that looks like, I guess, how many questions and how does that go out?
sure. Maybe what I will do is share this article with you guys, because there was some survey questions too around like when we send them out. I think it used to be 95% of the time we sent them out. We just changed that to 100% surveys sent. And how the survey looks, I think our survey questions are in here, I believe. So I'll see if I can attach that in the chat and or provide it in the community forum after. Any other questions in the chat?
I have one quick thing that I wanted to add. And for me, these metrics are great. They're important to have, but for me, it's also a guide that I use to find the why, right? Like not just saying this is what it is, but find out why it is what it is. And we drill down to individuals. We want to know, I have one tech that, oh, I'm doing, 8,000 tickets a day. Yeah. But he was also the Babe Ruth of tickets, right? Babe Ruth led the league in home runs, but he also led the league in strikeouts. So we had quite a few tickets from that person that he did incorrectly, right? So I had to explain to him, I don't need a Babe Ruth. I need somebody who gets on base consistently, right? To show the individual what's important to us, because they think, because they do so many tickets that's important, but you have to really set their sales so that they're doing overall what you need, what we need at Cornell and what we need at the service desk. So these are great. I love using these, but it really is a guide to help me find out the why. And, that's, I think, is more important, because when you can get to the root cause, you can then resolve a lot of other issues. So I just wanted to add that.
I'm responding to some of the other questions from the chat. And Bob, so if we don't have any other questions where people just want to unmute and ask, I'll do my best to get you guys some answers.
We have
in the
one
chat
hand up.
here.
Yeah, go ahead, Sonda.
Hi, just a question. So do you send out one survey across the board, or do you have like different ones maybe for different areas or ones for different services? Or is it just
One
that one?
one across the board. We've had some service delivery managers that wanted to have a custom survey to send, but as far as the CSAT scores, we keep it pretty consistent and made the decision just to have one survey consistently sent.
And do you change it out at all? Like maybe every year or every semester or something? Or it just stays the same across the
Ye-
board?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we entertain, like we
Okay.
do review it to see if we would want to make changes, but so far we've been happy with the standard one we came up with.
We went from the 5-star to the 10-star to the thumbs up and down. We tried quite a few different things,
Yeah.
and just wanted to get. I mean, what's the difference between 7 and 9, right? Like You know,
That's
so
what we
we
did
went,
too. We went from
yeah.
5 to 3 and said, what, those other ones really don't matter
Right,
so
right,
much.
right.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or
And
indifferent, right?
yeah.
You know.
Have you found it helps you to make decisions at all, or you just want to know, hey, are you overall happy? Right? I mean, that's pretty much what ours is. Are you overall happy? But, sometimes I think, well, it would be nice to do surveys where we can actually act upon some of the feedback that we get.
For,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we have a monthly meeting with all the service delivery managers, and so we look at the overall stat with everybody. But each service delivery manager really needs to then go look at the feedback results that's coming in for their service. So if they, drill down for their service and see that they're like at a, I'm gonna exaggerate, but say they're at like a 60% satisfied, then as a corrective thing, we're gonna ask them to go look at the actual feedback results that came in from customers to see what they're struggling with or what they're saying. And that's to help them then figure out what to improve. So it's definitely looking at it to drive improvement. But that's why I think the drill down is really important. Because to your point, like if you just look at things at the top level KPI, oh, we're 95%, we're good, I don't need to look anymore. That doesn't always tell the whole story. So really every service delivery manager has to be monitoring their service and looking at the discrete feedback that's coming in for their service.
Yeah, I take a kind of an Amazon approach. Is it delivery or is it the product? Right? So, sometimes people are not happy because they're losing something. It's not really the service, like we did something bad. It's more like, oh, well, we're, giving you less space or, Google storage or something like that. So we really have to dig down to find out what people are not happy about and then get a resolution on that.
Yeah, 100% agree on that one. Thank you.
Anybody else?
All right.
Okay.
Folks come up with additional questions or whatever. I think I'll say it now and I'll say it at the end. We're really trying to encourage some folks to use our, EDUCAUSE forums. So don't be shy, get out there, ask your questions. We're trying to get, let's continue the conversation. And I'll go ahead and jump in and share some Miami perspective here. I think if I do this window share, this will be good. Oops. Scroll down. So I'm gonna real quick kind of give some context, and I want to try to get into our live data as quickly as possible. So there's a lot of slides here. I will send this out afterwards, so anybody that wants to come back and look can do so on their own. But most of this is just here, so you guys can look at stuff after the fact, have a takeaway. But the a couple how we use metrics at Miami, just want to emphasize that we kind of look at it at different layers. So we've got our operational metrics that roll up into our tactical, that roll up into our strategic as best as possible. Service desk tends to be a fairly operational function, and so we get a lot of operational data, but we do try to translate that where we can to those tactical levels. For us, we really look at that two ways in terms of how those operational metrics fold up to our services, and also how those metrics fold up to our practices. So project management, service management, or service management specific practices like service desk or business relationship management or whatever. Very similar, just inverted from the picture that Alicia showed you. We look at it very similar. We've got transactions at the base of our data that fold up into metrics, which are really just calculations that drive KPIs. And I know we've both all used this terminology before about critical success factors and KPIs. So I thought it might be helpful to give you guys an example. I just pulled this at random from our incident management practice. We actually don't have this for our service desk because we looked at that really as just an implementation arm of incident and request fulfillment. We probably should reconsider that. But anyways, pulled what we had, which is, these are the critical success factors we've defined for our incident management practice, right? So these are the things that we believe if we do these 6 things well, we will deliver, high quality, good value out of our incident management practice. And so, we then go in and we get into, okay, how can we specifically measure what are the specific metrics, KPIs we can have that will allow us to assess each of those critical success factors. So we kind of like drill it down and kind of come up with okay, we have the data, we can, we have the ability, the tools and the calculation ability to kind of look at these various things. And you'll see a lot of recurring stuff between Miami and what you saw at Cornell. What's the current size of the backlog? None of this is particularly unique or anything like that, but it's kind of our thought process. And you'll notice these 4 categories across the top. The other thing we do is we're always trying to think about the perspective of, are these KPIs the result of something repeatable? So our compliance is, are we doing a process in a repeatable way that adheres to whatever standards we set? Quality is more about the quality of the outcomes, not so much the quality of the work going into the outcomes. How are we performing from a speed perspective, and are we delivering value? Do we have evidence of value at the other end of these practices? So just to give you that kind of context. And that kind of summarizes what I just said. And the other thing I wanted to emphasize is that, we use our metrics in a lot of different ways. So some examples, and probably the primary ways that we use them, is we do annual service reviews of most of our services. We're actually working to move this to biannual, so we can get all 60 every other year. And so we're trying to make sure we literally sit down with our service owners and look at all the details of their service, not just these metrics, but other things as well, on a regular basis. We also annually look at all of our service management practices, and Service Desk is one of those practices, and we pull a bunch of data for that. We do a monthly review of Service Desk data and a semi-annual review with our vendor. So one of the unique things about us in the Service Desk space is we outsource our Service Desk to a third party. And so a lot of our specific Service Desk data is actually coming from a third party. And then annually, we actually just did this. We get together with everybody and we look at what we call support tickets. So it's a combination of all of our incidents and service requests. And we kind of put that data in front of a real broad audience of anybody from IT that wants to come look with us. So, we try to use this data so that we can surface opportunities to do better, so that we can also surface ways to make the data better. So as an example, in our support ticket summit, one team member noted, they're like, I swear we do more work than this than reflected on here. I don't understand why my work's not reflected. And when we dug in, what we found was that they had a team within a team, and that sub team was being reported up through the wrong kind of aggregate, right? So their work was being swallowed up in something that they didn't recognize. And so we're able to correct it, and voila, find those errors. So part of the thing that I try to emphasize with people starting on their metrics journey is don't be afraid of erroneous data. You will have things in your data that need fixed. If you don't use it, you never find out. So, to some degree, don't let perfect be your enemy, right? Get out there, use the data, and try to do some things. And then real quick, there's a lot of slides on this next thing, and I'm going to kind of go through it like fire hose here, but I thought it was important to kind of emphasize when it comes to our service desk, one of the things that we really value and we think we do well is really setting standards for what we expect in a service desk type interaction. Even though we're using a third party, or I'd say primarily because we're using a third party, we stood up our own quality assurance program to really look at service desk interactions and try to be able to gain confidence that they're doing the job in the way that we would do it if it was our own, right? And so we're really look at that. So we pull samples and we literally go through, and we did this especially when they just started working for us, to really make sure that their tickets and the quality of the work that they're doing meet our standards. So we are rebooting this. We had paused for a while, but we are expecting to move to AI agents in the very new future. And so we wanted to get a baseline of how the humans are doing. So we basically have rebooted this effort. And I'm just giving you a sense here of the criteria. So we, in the reboot, we've identified that we really want to capture what we call conversational criteria. This is basically how good is the person at having the conversation at that first call, whether it's a chat or a phone call, understanding the problem and articulating. Now we're trying to do this because we want to then be able to evaluate how well the AI does the same thing. So we're really trying to be able to assess here how the humans do it so that we can have some comparative data and work to improve the AI with our vendor. And we have a whole rubric here of how we evaluate each of these criteria. And then in the tickets themselves, we have a bunch, a lot of this just very obvious, that it's like you got the right person and you got the right, you wrote a title that makes sense, and like it doesn't just say has problem, but also doesn't write like a ticket title that's a paragraph that you have to read to decipher. So, and we have a rubric for how we evaluate all of those. So we do this sampling so that we can basically gain confidence that the ticket data that we have is good data. And we can try to make sure that we're driving on improving that data. So, so with that, I'm going to jump into a couple of live demo stuff here. I think I have. So we are also Team Dynamics, coincidentally, shop, and I go in here and just show you. So one of the things we have on that quality control, just to show you, is in our ticketing system, we then can we actually do the scoring of the tickets as tickets in a way, so that we have the data right inside the ticketing system, so that for the things that we're currently monitoring, we can have nice little graphs that kind of go in and show us how we're doing week to week to week on those criteria that we're monitoring from a quality, from a compliance standpoint. Some other just kind of in Team Dynamics things that we do. I wanted to show our service desk. Again, we outsource, so we're a little bit blind on the activities of the service desk in the moment. So we tend to focus more on the stuff that escaped. I saw some references to that to Cornell as well. So we tend to focus on, okay, the service desk sent some stuff our way. We also are in a situation, I'm sure others are familiar with this too. We aren't the only service desk. We tend to talk about our service desk like it is the service desk, but every academic division has their own, so on and so forth. And so, what we can monitor as best we can is this one, for example, at the top here, college education health. They don't manage their tickets very well. You'll see some evidence of that, and that's not stuff necessarily that came from our service desk. It's largely stuff that came into them directly, and you kind of see them pop out. But, we continue to try to pressure them to do a better job and, work with them and collaborate and do those kinds of things. But, and then we get down to some of the other more tricky things. So our access group tends to have really long, they don't have that many, but they have tickets that take a very, very long time to resolve accessibility issues, right? So some of that stuff can last a very long time and things like that. So that's kind of all perspective on our service desk. Also thought it might be useful just from an operational standpoint to kind of see one of our teams. So this is stuff that mostly comes in through our outsourced service desk, because this team does not have its own service desk. And so, all of our managers of all of our solver teams kind of have a similar kind of dashboard that just lets them go through and kind of look at some different perspectives. We tend to do like what's it look like recently? What's it look like over the last 12 months, And so over the last 12 months, how much volume are we doing? Let's look at some surveys, let's look at what's driving our work from a service perspective. Let's look at our survey results, per technician, who's doing the work, and we basically get that in varying time slices, real like in the face of the managers in the ticketing system, so that they can click in, by the way, for those not familiar with TDX, and you can go in and see, okay, I don't know, I can actually pull up the list. Here are those tickets. And so this gives them that real interactive, like can dig in, and it's really intended for the managers of those groups. And so that's some of the operational stuff in TDX that I thought might be of use. And
Question in the chat for you, Bob, from
Yeah.
Meredith. How are you writing the reports for best asset, best KB, etc.?
So the rubrics basically, we have people go in and basically apply this rubric. So best asset selected, we sample, we pull, random collection of tickets, and then we look at those and we look at the asset that was picked from an expert perspective and go, okay, this was not at all related to the thing, up to, yes, this was the exact right thing, or maybe it was somewhere in the gray area. So we just apply this rubric as, was the question about the asset that ended up on the ticket. A lot of times at the beginning, we're just trying to make sure people are putting an asset. So, you know, a lot of times it's just trying to drive the behavior that we want of like, we should be able to pick out what application or what particular thing this ticket is about. Same with KB articles. There definitely is some human judgment in this, which is why we've done it with the rubric. One of the conversations we have about quality control is it's a little bit of the, oh shoot, I forget the Dr. Seuss thing where you have the watchers watching the watchers. The star-bellied sneeches, I think, is the one. And, you know, it's like how do you audit the auditors? You know, that conversation can get you pretty wrapped around the axle. So we tend to just go, this is just meant to help us directionally know, are we doing a good enough job? Are the ticket quality moving up, moving down? Even if we're assessing it, say wrong, it should still be directionally right or wrong, is kind of how we look at it. So, so hopefully that helps.
Yeah,
You know,
thanks. It's something you're exporting in hand scoring, not pulling up
correct.
report.
Yeah. Now we are talking about having some AI starting to do some of this and kind of look at an AI interpretation and sampling of our ticket data to see, you know, how well it could do versus the humans at looking at finished tickets and go, okay, you know, could it be trained and some of that. But today it's a human process of, yeah, literally sampling and looking at it and going, yep, this was the service desk or the person who managed this ticket did it well. The person who managed the ticket didn't do it well. Yeah, great question. Okay. So I wanted to kind of get into our Tableau here. Yeah, I think I'll do that next. Well, okay, sorry. I just had a couple slides to kind of show some examples, then I'll dig into our Tableau. But I talked about how we do an annual practice review, which tend to service the thing. So this is literally from our service desk practice review back in February, you know, and it tends to surface the KPIs that we care about the most when we're talking about service desk. And so we've got, you know, data going back, and this is just a table summary, just it gives us kind of a point in time check of how did things look year to year across these KPIs that we've defined for many, many years. And we also kind of, since again, we outsource, we have actual contracted SLAs. Our vendor is expected to meet the SLAs on these, and they are judged monthly. And so we actually track, did they in fact meet their SLAs month to month? And how many months did they hit and how many did they not? And we get some small financial recompensation when they don't meet them. And you can see they have struggled with certain things like handle time we never hit. So it's been something we continuously work with them on, trying to get their handle times down. Okay, so with that, I will dig into our Tableau here for a few minutes because I could spend hours on this. And kind of look at some of the stuff we look at. I have zoomed this in to only be tickets that come through our outsourced service desk. So things that come in other ways, I could add in here, and we can look at that as a comparative thing, and that is something that we can do. You know, and so just some of the graphs that we look at regularly. And what we do, by the way, is we zoom these in and out. So sometimes when we meet monthly, we'll actually only grab 2 worths of data. When we're meeting annually, we might grab several years. So it's kind of like, what's the time horizon for the situation that makes sense for the conversation that we're having? And, you know, we can pull out whatever we want. And similar, you know, we've got a lot of ways that we can break this out. So we can say, actually, I just want to look at this, and this is going to make this graph look pretty wonky. But I can look and say, okay, let's actually break this out by the various solver teams and look at their volume to see, you know, who rises to the top and who's handling all the work. Or I can look at by I call these service groups. So these are kind of like rolling up some of our individual service into logical groupings, you know, and we can break any of these graphs that I'm going to show you out into these different kind of perspectives. And so, you know, year over year, how's our volume rolling? So, you know, we got the month to month that aggregates, and we can see, you know, we leading into COVID really went up, but we're coming back down to some pre-COVID levels lately. You know, we can look just at that pattern of business activity. You know, we all know this in higher ed. We've got these huge spikes and valleys that tend to line up with the starts of terms. And, you know, it's just nice to see that on a graph. We actually can look at, you know, different types of tickets. We actually maybe divert a little bit from ITIL. We found that ITIL doesn't always have a great thing for what we call operations. We have a lot of tickets that we do, things that we do to try to prevent things from breaking, or trying to do things that are going to, I don't know, to keep track of making sure things are going well. And so we put those in our operational bucket to separate them out from your typical customer request. And we got our problem management here and stuff as well. We look at where our stuff is coming from. This one's a little more interesting, so I'll look at that. So we have these primary channels, and you can see we had a huge shift back when we actually shifted and introduced Duo at the same time. So this is our real shift to introducing Duo and the way we did some account stuff, and it really caused a massive shift towards chat. Kind of drove people to the chat platform with that change. We can see where our tickets are coming from. So from a perspective of, who's driving all of this activity, is it students, is it faculty, is it staff? Again, and I can zoom in on different time frames here if I wanted to. We also tend to look at that from a unique perspective. I find this graph to always be interesting, so, and this is over the lifetime well, no, this wouldn't be lifetime, or yeah, so the lifetime, how many unique people have put in a ticket. So this probably isn't useful over 8 years, but if I were looking at 1 year, I'd have a better sense. But we see that students are our primary driver for contacting the service desk. And we can also look then at who's filling out the surveys, and we see that while they are that big driver, they actually are the worst at giving us that feedback. So that gives us some context around when we look at feedback survey results. Okay, staff are maybe a little overrepresented in their opinions about how well we're doing, and students are underrepresented in their opinions given how much of the volume they make up, right? Let's see, trying to see, we can look at like who are some heavy hitters. We tend to do that at the monthly. Yeah, especially this one, so that we can look for people that might be in pain or that are experiencing some kind of situation, and we can kind of go in here and say, actually, I only care about incidents or service requests, and kind of zoom in on that. We monitor how frequently we have what we call request models. So these are specific forms that come in with structured data so that we can either automate or try to make efficient some of those things. Oops, I'm breaking out here. Get rid of my breakout. And you can see our password reset form is up there, but we've got a variety of other defined request models, and we try to monitor how frequently those are being used. And we're really trying to drive people to that be the way. We hate just generic help me kind of stuff. We want people to be specific. What are you trying to do? And let's have a specific process to be able to handle that. Much like Cornell and probably everyone else, we've got our customer sat. You can see here, 85% is our target. And that's defined, again, I'm zoomed in on just the vendor, and you can see when we went live with outsourced service desk and kind of that J curve that happens with major change like that as we tried to get better. Also note that we often find, the most recent, we're still waiting on survey data to come in. So this looks bad right now. I guarantee we come back next month, that'll pop up. For whatever reason, we tend to see a little bit of a lag in that. So we tend to keep that in mind because we've observed that over time. And again, I can break this out. So one of the things that I, have had my eye on for many years, you really can see that for whatever reason, our vendor is much better at handling things on the phone, but it's not a very popular mechanism. And so we're trying to figure out how can we have them take what we do on the phone and apply the same skill set, especially to chat. So why is the phone interaction so much better from a customer satisfaction than chat? I hate email as a channel. We are working to eliminate that. No surprise to me that that channel is seeing such a negative response. It's inherently problematic for reasons maybe I won't even get into today. So I want to be mindful of the time here. Trying to think if there's anything. There was a lot of talk about escalations and stuff, so I thought I would show a couple charts real quick. But we can see, we look at, and this is zoomed. Let's zoom in. Oops, Yes, I did do that right. Zoom in year to year, and you can kind of see that, you know, how much stuff our outsourced service desk receives and keeps. And then we can look at how much stuff escapes and to where it escapes. And we can even break that into a Pareto chart. So we can really look, this is only stuff resolved in the last 2 years, you know, who's doing the heavy lifting of resolving those tickets, you know, if it's not the service desk, so that we can work with them to see what things we can. We're always looking for those opportunities to take stuff that is escaping and have it not escape, have it handled at the service desk. You know, what can we do to empower them to do the thing that needs done? We do hold them to a standard that there is certain stuff they are supposed to solve. And so we have a mechanism in Team Dynamics for anyone to flag a ticket that does get escalated by them that shouldn't have. And then we can measure and report those. And we just use tagging for the TDX folks out there. We just have a tag we ask people to put on the ticket so that we can report and go, oh, that ticket really should have, the solver believes that shouldn't have never come to them. You know, what can we do to make it better? And that type of thing. We do a look at resolution times a little bit as well. We put ours kind of into buckets. And so what we would call first contact resolution, we kind of have used this terminology quick close, which basically means it got resolved at the time that it came in, which means email can never happen, right? Email already out because you can't, unless you're like watching the thing, answering the email like right away, like those aren't even possible. And so, you know, then how long does stuff take after that? We do some also, our help desk is very good at citing KB articles. They are required to have a KB article on every ticket. And so we're able to kind of look at, okay, what KB articles are driving their behavior as well. And so, you know, it's kind of one of the unique things that we do. And we can, you know, set different parameters here around, is it public knowledge? Anything that's public knowledge, we believe is something that we could drive towards self-service. Like basically this is the help desk reading instructions to people. Like that's all they're doing. They're just reading instructions. Like you could have read the instructions yourself and not needed to call the service desk. So how do we help people help themselves is one of the things that this tends to drive. Last slide I had for you all, and then I know we're okay to stay a few minutes over. If there are questions, is somebody asked about like customer satisfaction kind of follow up. One of the things that we do that I thought might be useful to others is anytime a customer satisfaction comes in as negative for us, we circle back and do an investigation. And so because like others find, it's not always the service desk's fault. So in our case, many times we do find it was adhering to the procedure that had been established, or it's their soft skills or whatever. But a lot of the times it was like, no, nothing was wrong. Nothing went wrong. We can't find any evidence that everything went wrong. I'm not saying the person wasn't unhappy, but there's no evidence something went wrong. Or a lot of these we've been working to break out. You'll see Miami IT is they don't like Duo. We hear that a lot. People don't like two-factor. Well, okay, you've got to use it, guys. So it's not really our decision. And so we try to separate some of those things out so that we can report back month to month, you know, what's driving some of that dissatisfaction so that we can drive improvement. One of my concerns is always that we spend a little bit too much time looking at the bad. We have been trying to inject a little bit of wisdom into that so that we look at some of the top stuff, you know, a little better, like what's making people happy? How do we continue to deliver like the happiness? We tend to focus on the negative quite a bit here. But yeah, so I know that's a lot very rapidly, but hopefully it gives people some good ideas or some things to consider. And I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So are there questions or things you'd like me to dig into for a few minutes?
Question in the chat from Donovan. When you complete a service review, how do you determine the service's value? Maybe this was just Miami, but interested to know from both parties.
Yeah, great question. We have struggled a little bit in our service reviews with getting good service data. We tend to focus so much on the support aspects, or have historically. And so we've been really trying to drive towards okay, how do we know people are having a good time or, getting value out of the service? Sadly, the only thing we've been able to come up with is just doing surveys, service-based surveys. So we've started doing that periodically a little bit. We have a couple annual surveys that give us insights into some services like our LMS and some of the big hitters, but we don't necessarily have that for some of the smaller services. So what we've started doing is just in preparation to a service review, we send an audience, a subset of customers that for that service, a survey and ask them how we're doing. Is this service delivering value? What do you like? What do you dislike? Those kinds of things. And it's hard, response rate's not great, like, all kinds of survey bias that happens in this, of course, but it's the best thing that we've found so far. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so for us, and this, I will say it's hard to measure value because that's in the eye of the beholder, and that looks, somewhat different based on if it's students, faculty, or staff. So not related to service desk metrics, we do have, within those SLEs that we write up for each service, there's a section for measurement and reporting that's just about what the service delivery manager and service owner feel like they need to measure to monitor the health of their service or know if it's valuable. So for some, that can look like adoption. If it's like a new service that we're launching and we're trying to measure how many people are starting to use it. So Secure Connect for biometric authentication would be one where primarily they're looking to see, is it getting adopted? Like what's the percentage there of our whole population that's using it over time? And then for others, measuring value can look like if it's a platform administration service offering, that one might be easier because it's really how many outages or uptime, downtime, because that's a case where it's more of a B2B service where we're offering it to another IT area on campus. And so measuring value for that is really how reliable is it? And then there's other services where there might be something to measure around, like if it was printing, how many things are we printing for how many people over time? If it's a consumable, it's measuring how much that gets consumed to figure out the value of the service. That really gets specific to what service are you offering and how you define value for those customer groups to figure out what your unique service metrics need to be. And that's somewhat separate from what the service desk measures because we measure those more discreetly within the SLEs. And it's really up to the service owner, service delivery manager to consider that as part of their strategy roadmaps, communicate that to leadership over time or stakeholder groups to make sure they're staying on top of, is this service delivering value or should we retire it or switch to something else?
And I'll just focus on the service desk. What I push at my service desk is two things that we really try to measure that would add value for the customer is, are we fixing the problem? If we can't fix the problem, can we fix the customer, right? We have to be the customer's advocate. And we get a lot of feedback about that. Well, I had to stay on the line with someone, but eventually they fixed it, something like that. So we always look at the value that we give the customer to let them know that we're in the fight with them. So if it's something that we can't fix right there, we'll follow up with them and let them know what's going on with the ticket. So either we're fixing the problem, we can't fix the problem, let's fix the customer and let them know that we're in there helping them, and that we'll make sure that, we'll do the follow-ups, and so that they can give it to us and not worry about it.
All right, great. I shared a flurry of things in the chat, Bob. I will say that there seems to be a lot of interest in the practice of what we call service level management, and that's somewhat different than service desk. So maybe we get some more resources out there on EDUCAUSE around things like SLEs and targets and SLAs.
I agree. Yeah, I think that is maybe the next practice. We're trying to figure out what is our next focus. I think some service level management might be a good a good one. I put the link to my slides in the chat there that contains some of the context that I went through in case somebody wants to dig in. And I will also follow up on the CGs with the recording and with links to anything that we're willing to provide here for everyone. So hopefully you got something good out of it that you can, take and put to use, or at least validated maybe that you're not doing as, I think a lot of people come into these thinking, oh, we're not doing it. Yeah, you are doing more than you think you are. So hopefully you got some validation, if nothing else. So
Thanks, Bob.
thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Have a
Good
great
luck out
day.
there.
Okay.
Bye all.
Bye.